A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangushampagi. And tonight I have a panel that will be discussing the state of Uganda's politics. It's a long background that I need to explain before we start the show. In January, civil society organizations released a statement titled Reclaiming Our Citizenship and Dignity, and lay out a number of issues that they think citizens of Uganda want to engage with as they reclaim their citizenship. Last week, the National Resistance Movement celebrated 31 years in power. And during that celebration, President Yoweri Museveni, out of everything else that he said, one thing stood out. He asserted that he is nobody's servant, he's not an employee of anybody, and if people think he is working, he says, I am working for myself, I'm working for my beliefs. I'm not working for, and that has been tied with a statement he had made much earlier, which has made a lot of the debate over the last few days since the NRM's celebrations. And then, of course, the other issue was the new list of diplomats he has appointed to various missions. It's a total of 35 diplomatic missions for which he has named leaders. Some are actually still serving in those missions, others are new, but two stood out. One is the appointment as the deputy ambassador of Muhammad Kezaala, Baswale Kezaala, I think that's the correct name, of the Democratic Party to a deputy ambassadorial posting to a mission not yet named. And the other is the appointment or the naming of the King of Busoga, the Chabazinga, as a new diplomat. That has been causing a lot of debate. We'll be trying to deal with some of those issues over the next 1 hour. Let me introduce the panel that I have in studio, and then I'll make the apology after that. But you can now see the panel already. At the extreme end is Nicholas Opio. Nicholas Opio is, works with Chapter 4. He's an advocate of the High Court and a human rights lawyer. Or maybe all the things mean the same thing, actually.
In fact, the correct thing to say is that the advocate of the courts of judicature, because we don't just
you don't just go to the High Court, yes.
Yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank you for the correction.
Deeply privileged to be in the presence of very senior citizens in this country.
Okay, thank you very much. Good to have you here. We have a senior citizen, Yona Kanyomoze. He doesn't need any other introduction. I think that's enough.
Thank you very much, viewers. I hope we'll discuss these things which matter to Ugandans, and you will pick at least something useful to help us move on.
I just had one thing about Yona Kanyomoze. No, two things actually. One is he at one time was President Yoweri Museveni's teacher. That's many years ago. Maybe we'll dig a little bit into that. And then the other thing about Yona Kanyomoze is he was once Minister for Cooperatives in this country when cooperatives actually existed. There's been a whole debate about whether the current SACCOs are cooperatives or whether they can lead to back to the cooperative.
For SACCOs.
Well, there's a minister
and
in charge of microfinance, that's how they call it.
And the other guest we have, the other panelist we have tonight is the Lord Mayor, Arias Lukwago. He doesn't need more introduction.
Thank you, my brother. The panel is here. Good evening, viewers. Hope we shall have a meaningful engagement. And
of course, the notable absence. Ona Peter Ekomolo is not with us in studio. I think caught up with a lot of other issues, engagements that he's handling. Let me start with where I started with the introduction with Nicholas Opio. Civil society issued a statement saying reclaiming our citizenship and dignity. What exactly is it that this statement means? You work with them more closely.
Charles, I was a part of the team that drew this statement together with the National NGO Forum, Action Aid, the Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda, and a host of other organizations, including FIDA. And this is really in line with what civil society has been doing for the last 5 years. But at the beginning of every year, we reflect on the year. We actually take time to celebrate successes, but also reflect on challenges that we've had and provide what we think are recommendations on what we should engage in that year. And finally, recommit ourselves to our core mission every single year. So for the purposes of this year, we thought about the role of ordinary Ugandans in changing their lives, the centrality of the citizen in this country, that we needed to reinvigorate the sense of agency amongst ordinary Ugandans. Just to say that the state might exist, but the state may not be the ultimate solution to your problems. In fact, that power lies with the people, and that people should realize that power lies with them and should use that power to effect change in their lives, whether it is a change of leadership, whether it is a change of your own status, whether it's a fight against poverty. So the centrality of the citizens of this country in shaping the direction of this country, in making sure that people who hold delegated power on behalf of the people of this country listen to what people want them to do. So that is the core intention. Now, in terms of the things that we were celebrating that happened last year, there were a couple of things that we actually took time to reflect on. One is the role of sports in bringing people together. I think never before in the history of this country, at least the history since 1986, have we seen sports taking a very central role in bringing everybody in this country, irrespective of your religion, your tribe, whatever it is. So the power of sports, whether it is football, athletics, whether it is rugby or basketball, the power of sports in uniting this country and making us rediscover our identity as Ugandans. Because oftentimes people reflect in this country as a multi-ethnic society, a divided society, but sports just brings people together, has the magnetic force of bringing people together. The second thing that we celebrated last year was the question of elections. We've had several problems with the elections, but the fact that this country defied the naysayers who thought that this country would get plunged into conflict, into violence, that even if we have had huge challenges with the election, the country emerged as one country, as a united country, and there was no wide-scale violence as people had anticipated. But also the issue of the economy, we noted that we have had a fairly decent control of inflation in the country in last year. But those things notwithstanding, there are also moments of concerns. We expressed deep concerns about large-scale corruption in public offices, that it appears corruption is becoming the norm as opposed to the exception, that every government project, every government initiative is bedeviled with corruption, and that corruption is eating away our society at all levels. The second thing that we raised was the fraud during the election. Every single election observer noted that the last election was far from being a free and fair election, and the election did not meet the standards required of a free and fair election. So we raised concerns about that as well. The other concern that we raised was the question of widespread, violations of human rights. The year ended with extrajudicial killings in the Rwenzururu. What in my view is both extrajudicial and revenge killings in the Rwenzururu kingdom, and we raised concerns about that. We've had other incidents of violence across the country where security personnel just didn't exercise restraint. So we raised concerns about it as well. We raised concerns about the dysfunctionality of state institutions, whether it is the health sector, whether it is the road sector. Systems just don't seem to work, and it appears that there is a continual deterioration of systems and institutions in Uganda. So we're deeply concerned about that. We are deeply concerned about the threat of, drought because of climate change and our inability to address climate change in this country. So we raised these concerns. Now, in terms of what we recommended for going forward, there are a couple of things we recommended, and we look at this as opportunities for this country to actually pounce on. The first is the need for electoral reforms and constitutional reforms. I think that all of us agree that there's need for a new dispensation, a need for a new consensus in this country, and that if this country is to avoid relapse into the past, there's need for us to come together to reflect on the future for this country. They need to search for a new consensus and reflect on what are meaningful reforms, not reforms that are brought at the 11th hour, purposes of actually winning election by the incumbent, but meaningful electoral reforms. The second thing that we asked for is the question of a national consensus. We continue to argue for a national dialogue, for people to come together to chart a future for this country, beyond the shades of disagreements that we have in politics or whatever it is, to come together. The last thing that we asked is the question of empowering people, the resilience of the Ugandan people, and that leaders must live in fear. They must be servants of the people, not masters of the people. And trying to find and reinvigorate that spirit and let leaders become subservient to the people. and we recommend our efforts to the fight against corruption, to the fight against widespread abuse of human rights, and a host of other things.
Now, the question I want to put there, to what effect? You issue a statement, yes, this recalling citizens, you've issued statements over the last 5 years. Does it really make a difference? And to involve everyone else in the discussion, I'll first move and then I'll come back to you. Let me put to Yana Kanyomos. You served and been a member of the Uganda People's Congress for many years.
Yes.
You still are.
Yes.
The question of citizen agency is a question that arises every now and then, especially when it comes to dealing with the question of politics. We're discussing the state of Uganda's politics. You've heard what civil society came up with. You listened to the president speak in Masindi. You've had the debate that has followed since he made the statements that he made, but especially about the position of either civil society, the political position, in making this so-called citizen agency emerge and claim what it's supposed to claim.
Well, the citizens can claim a position because the Constitution allows them that status of saying the power belongs to the people. But then you have got to realize that we are in a peculiar position with this present regime. After the Civil War in '86, the coming into power of NRM, though there was a pretense that first, we all pretended we were in the same party, there was no division. Some of us maintained the position that we are actually not in the same party, and I can give you an example. I said I'm in the movement, and the chairman of the movement said I wasn't in the movement, and yet I was a member of the National Resistance Council, which I thought was the supreme body
of the movement.
So there hasn't been that clear understanding by Ugandans. It also, that understanding not only by Ugandans, even by those people who went in the bush with the present leadership. They did not understand the major purpose and drive and mission of the person who was leading them. That's why I said the man has deviated. I've always said the man has not deviated. He had a program. He stuck to that program, and that's why he comes up on the 31st anniversary and says, "I'm not a servant of anybody. I'm working for my beliefs, and I'm trying to help you." So it really means that whatever we are dealing with, we either follow or we are forgotten. So this thing of saying, oh, there has been a deviation, there have been forgetting what we set out to do, is not true. As far as I'm concerned, President Museveni has stuck to what took him to the bush, or what he wanted. He said he started it 50 years ago, doesn't he? And 50 years ago, how old was he?
Yeah, he was about 20.
He was about 20. By the time I met him, he was even 16, I think. And I was about 18 myself. If he started at that time, I didn't recognize it. And most of the Ugandans seem not to have recognized that the man had a program long before, which is implementing. And if you took what the statement to Jeff Koinange on K24, he said, yes.
KTN.
Yes.
KTN.
Yes. He said, I'm working for myself, for my children, and for my grandchildren. He didn't say he's working for Ugandans, or for the poor, or for the unhealthy, or for anybody. Things are stated in clear terms. So when people get worked up and my young man here writes all these good statements, he should either know that he's dealing with a situation which, if he doesn't change it, I hope not with another civil war, because we have had too many of them. If he doesn't change it, we are stuck.
But let me ask, the bigger question is, where is the place of the citizen? Because if the president says, I am not anybody's servant, and everybody else said, I'm not anybody's servant, maybe would arrive at the collective good somewhere.
Yeah, no. But he told you also, he is not anybody's servant. He's fighting for his beliefs.
See, I'm a freedom fighter.
Yes, he's a freedom. I don't know who he's a freedom fighter, but that one is also misrepresentation on his part. Freedom fighters fight for the freedom of others. They don't fight for the freedom of themselves. And if he says, I'm a freedom fighter and I'm fighting this battle,
he says,
I'm
helping you.
helping you.
Yes, you thought I'm a person who could.
Yes, I'm not your servant, but I'm trying to help you. If you come along, I will help you. If you don't come along, that's your problem.
Maybe that's the question that needs to be cracked.
Yes.
Are citizens coming along? Are they taking the lead? What do they need to do?
They have been coming along for the last 31 years. Maybe what you may ask now, are these citizens going to not come along? And what are the implications of that? If they don't come along with the determination of the person you saw last few days, I don't know what will happen.
Just one last question before I go to the Lord Mayor. The pupil you had, yes, the difference might have been only 1 year.
2 years.
Or maybe 2 years.
Yes.
And the person you meet today, are they one and the same? Or would you detect at that time?
You know, I only was in class where he was for a period of 9 years. And mark you, when people say I was a teacher, it seems as if I was actually qualified teacher. I was just a student teacher waiting to go and do my A-levels in Nairobi. And I started in January and ended in September. No, the only thing I can say is that the man I met, the young man I met, was a determined person. If he said to do something, he tried very hard to do it. And that determination is still there. He hasn't deviated on that one. But the other things of what he has done, the only thing which I didn't dig up is his ability to make statements, not realizing that other people also understand them. If you read through the statements he has made, he changes them so often. That one I couldn't detect at that time with the student-teacher relationship.
But you had also studied together, did you?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Okay. Lord Mayor, the bigger question that's coming especially to you and to the larger opposition is, where are you in this call for citizen agency that Nicholas was talking about? I mean, I saw your comments earlier. I saw Segona commenting. I have seen the president of the Democratic Party, President General Norbert Mao, commenting, and over the appointment, for example, of your national chairman, Muhammad Kezaala, to an ambassadorial position. When you tie these things together, there seems to me a string that links everything. Your troubles at City Hall, as a mayor, as a Lord Mayor, the appointment of key opposition people into the government. Last year, you are independent but affiliated or closely, you're a member of the Democratic Party. Is that correct? Though you stood as an independent. You had Nachuala Chinji Florence being appointed a minister. You had you had Beti Kamya appointed a minister as a party president, Federal Alliance Party. Now you have a party chairman appointed an ambassador, and everybody's crying. Uganda Young Democrats have been saying this man must renounce our party. It's not President Museveni's problem. It is partly your weakness. Wouldn't you say?
Sure. that is surprising. That is not his problem. But anyway, you are raising quite a number of issues. One, You started with the question of the role of the citizenry in all this. I think that's where we started from. And of course, you ended up with this manipulative politics of President Museveni, which of course has been, he has mastered and he's practiced for a long time. But one thing that intrigued me when you were probing Mzee Kanyomo's here on the question of Yoweri Museveni's politics at that early age when she was his teacher, that while he could not probably detect that actually he would behave the way he's behaving right now, something came into my mind, which this statement I've always read in the social media, I don't know how true it is, which is being attributed to the late Mwanga, that when he appeared before the Human Rights Commission, he warned the Ugandans. At that time, Museveni had just captured the power, and he told Ugandans, he put us on notice. In fact, he said it to have raised the red flag, that by the time that actually this man was going to stay around for a long time in power, he was hoodwinking Ugandans that he was a freedom fighter, that he was going to restore democracy. Remember, in the 10-point program, the first point was about restoration of democracy. He has since negated that. So he warned us that by the time he relinquishes power, Uganda would be in ruins, and that would take, decades. So far, we have seen it. It has passed. It has come to pass. He has ruled us for decades. And the other day, he didn't mince words. Actually, he was brutally honest to Ugandans that look here. And actually, you have to put it in context. He was celebrating 31 years in power, and he was telling us, look here, I don't derive my power from you. That's essentially what he was talking. That in fact, he fell short of telling the Ugandans that, look here, because he said he's a freedom fighter, that the source of his power is the gun. And actually, I'm surprised this time around he didn't come in a combat, and he didn't brandish the AK-47. Typical of him, every time he's celebrating 31 years in power, maybe he'll do it. Tarehe Sita is just around the corner. He's going to do that. He'll brandish the AK-47. Basically, what is happening right now, the citizens of this country have been deprived of that power. It is Article 1 of the Constitution is illusory. Actually, in your assessment, there isn't much you should celebrate, Nicholas, with all due respect.
But let me ask you, how can one person be blamed for citizens ceding their power? You see, and especially if you try to focus a little bit more on the opposition. If your officials get appointed, some, like Segona said earlier today, on merit, and others manipulatively, whether they merit the appointment or take it believing honestly that they want. We'll go deeper into the discussion about the appointment. The question is, would you blame President Museveni for...
Let's talk about Holocaust, for example.
For doing what he has done, and when does democracy necessarily mean that the hold of an election must lose it to be seen to be democratic?
No, you see, histories are awash with stories of dictators grabbing powers from the citizens. And when you talk about, for example, I was talking about the Holocaust in Germany, you talk about Hitler, you talk about people like Mussolini, you talk about people like Metternich and others in Europe, and even here in Africa you have quite a number of case studies. Point here is you have a face of a terrorist, if I may call it that, a system. Right now, the kind of terrorist organization you have in Uganda, the NRM, I'm sorry, Mzee, for me, in my assessment, it is a terrorist organization. You went to them, you picked a gun, overthrew a gun. No, you were not in the bush, so I'm sorry. You were in the government, actually. No, your government was overthrown.
He's telling you that as early as 1987, 88, 89, when he claimed he was a member of the NRC, he was told he was not a member of the movement.
He was not a member of the movement. Yes. I'm sorry for that. But the whole point I was making...
But I think
you said, I was driving to the issue you are raising. So don't discount the power of a dictator who wields overwhelming power, who grabs the state institutions right now. You do question why now Parliament has been subjugated.
As a member of the opposition, you have ceded that power.
No, it's not
either weakness in organization or commitment to what you believe to be able to.
You see, Charles, you are forgetting. Since you have brought the case of Hitler, in fact, Hitler did it differently. Hitler came in not with a gun, he came in through a vote, right? But when he came in, he used the position he had to grab power. And once he had the SSS armed, terrorizing the citizens, everybody fell in line.
Okay.
So you should take that one into account. Secondly, even Mussolini the same, and others. You need to know that people fear coercion, and when coercion is presented, and you know that you are going to be coerced, most people easily give in unless they decide to revolt against
the opposition. The bigger question would be: has the opposition stepped up to the plate to play your role?
That is,
I have heard people over the last few days.
If the opposition has been able to be allowed to organize for 20 years,
must it be allowed? Must it wait for permission?
No, it can't. If they don't,
I'm afraid I'm being told that we need to take a quick break.
Yeah, but I don't speak for any political party. But let me say this: the obtaining condition of operations of political party is less than ideal, Charles. If you look at political parties in the frame of people who appear on TV and stuff like that, you'll miss the point. Look at the operating environment in which the opposition parties operate. It's an environment of deep cohesion. You cannot organize and meet voters in a constituency. You ask the Honorable Herias Lukwago. Sometimes even holding a rally in his own constituency is a problem.
We could debate the question of strategy, the question of realizing the situation in which you're operating and how you plan and respond to it. Yona here was part of the, I want to imagine that after the fall of the Obote government, the start of the NRA war, you have been part of discussions, political discussions at different levels to plot on how to, to manage the country. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we need to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I have been informed that Ona has been actually watching the show from the lobby up there, and he should be joining us on set. So he'll be joining us after short commercial break. We'll be right back. You're still watching the Fourth Estate. The panel has expanded, and Ona is now in studio. So Ona has to explain to us why he came late, why he got delayed, and then we can continue with the discussion.
Yeah, apologies to the viewers, but I was driving all the way from Tesla, going for some rain making. And fortunately it worked, and it rained today after a long time in my village.
It's even rained in Ntungamo today, the whole day.
I know that there's a young fan of the show called Emma who's watching, Imalaika, who's watching the show and needed you to explain that to account for why you are delayed. But good to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
We're dealing with a complex, a rather complex topic, which is taking into account various issues tied around, it's just 1 month into the new year. Lots of things happened over the last year, which was an election year. Now you started the new year. And the celebrations mark 31 years in power. I think it's a misrepresentation by the NRM, say 31 years of NRM, because NRM is not in power the way it came 31 years ago. What you have is a new formation, which is about 10 years old now.
That's misunderstanding the whole thing. NRM is in power from 1986 to the present.
President Museveni is in power from 1986 to today.
Actually,
whether it's the NRM or not, I don't know.
Whether you call it President Museveni or Museveni alone, NRM and Museveni are not separate. They are the
as
same.
a political organization.
Personally, I would even trace it back to
let me even go further. Let me say this. If a man says, I'm only working for my beliefs, and he produces a manifesto, so
maybe that's why we need to question.
So where are the beliefs?
But let me get to this discussion. The big question is, the president made some statements the other day. We started with a statement issued by civil society for the new year, issued this month actually. They are kind of stock taking of the last year and trying to do some projections for the new year to shape the agenda for discussion. And one of the central things they are putting is citizen agency. And the president says I'm not anybody's servant. People have been quoting Article 1 of the Constitution says power belongs to the people. They are quoting Chapter 9, I think, the presidency. The office of the president. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Chapter 9, yes.
Chapter 9 of the presidency. How does someone become president? What are the powers that they have? And when you describe the concept of servant, in a local language, servant might mean something different. Others would call it mpakasi, others would call it omwiru, sitting somewhere working for you. But if you remove that and say as a leader, as especially a political leader, as a freedom fighter, you fight to help other people. When you say I am not a servant, and is it the president's problem? Is it the NRM's problem? Is it political parties that have been too weak or have failed in strategy to make sure that they can have, they can counter? We also tying in together the recent appointments, especially of the chairman of the Democratic Party, to which the Lord Mayor belongs.
I think the president's statement, it can both be defended and criticized rightly. In terms of defending, I imagine he was trying to put the NRA ascent to power in context, that it was not about getting a job, because he had taken enough risk that maybe many people will not take in order to get a job, that he had to go through a war where he could have easily have been killed. So that could not be some, just on, hold on, let me make my point. I'm not disagreeing with what you say.
Just a small question here. Are you suggesting that he wants to become a president? He went to the bush to become a president?
No, I think he's saying...
is that what you're suggesting?
Just from the point of defending, I think he's saying that what NRA did, or what people like him did, was not about just asking to serve, but it was about sacrificing, it was about believing in something. But of course, those who have criticized him are also right, and I think around this studio he has been criticized, that once he went through an election, he should now be expected to say that he's there by the will of the people. That's what an election is about. So maybe his state has changed, but we know President Museveni has really remained a military leader. I mean, and he doesn't shy from that. So any say in Uganda knows that even without elections, he would still perhaps be in power. So these elections are just
cosmetic. The elections are cosmetic.
Yeah. So you can maybe understand why he feels that he does not really have to. It's not because of anybody that he is actually in power.
Yeah.
It's because of his own initiative and then rallying those others who believed in what he was believing, and then he got to power. So sometimes you want to pretend, but I think that is his strength also, that he can actually be native if you want to say it. Some Ugandans appreciate that. Ugandans also want a strong man. They know the history of this country. That's why I think even a man like Besigye, during elections, there's a bit of posturing around him like he's a military guy, he has escorts, he has... People love that kind of thing, that the guy is self-made. That's
I wanted to answer a question you posed to us about the opposition not doing anything. How do you expect the opposition to do anything? The road mayor here, Elias Rukago, and his group, and the Besigye have tried to do something. The intelligentsia in this country are the first ones to come out and condemn them. They are going to spoil business. They are going to do this. They are disrupting everything we have.
Can I chip in here, Mzee? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Kaihura was asked the other day as to the biggest challenge he has faced in his life as a IGP.
He said Lukwago and
no, he wasn't terrorist.
So I'm saying, when you ask that the opposition should do something, why haven't they done something? When we do it, you will be the first one to call in us, some people, not us, maybe necessarily, in this studio, to condemn the disruption of business, to condemn how you have stopped traffic, condemn how you are making
If I may just chip in there, just two quick broad points. That as a political strategist, you've got to admire President Museveni. I think it was Norbert Mao who said he needs to study President Museveni. For somebody to hold on to power that long, there's something about him that perhaps many of us don't understand. But I think that, of course, on this studio, on this panel, I'm the youngest, perhaps, but what I think I have seen in President Museveni are two things that he has mastered. running a clientele state. A state based on clientelism. You know, you give out jobs, give out money, you bribe so and so in the opposition and get them together. In a state where people are really poor, that kind of system works. The second thing that happens to President Museveni is his desire to unleash unquestionable force and violence on the population.
The means of coercion.
The means of coercion. I mean, look at all the episodes. Buganda riots in 2009, the walk to work in 2011, Rwenzururu, what happened in Ugulu. That state that descends upon you mercilessly and can do anything, in fact, going to the extreme end of killing you, instills fear that when the man coughs, people have to listen.
So now, let me ask the question. Let me put the question across the table. Does that then mean that the opposition should lend itself either for subjugation or for growth?
Can I answer that?
Growth.
Yes.
Can I answer that? Look here, you are talking about a person who has mastered the art. Actually, you can simplify it this way, Nicholas, that he has combined both terror and patronage or bribery, if you may call it that way. So, how do you deal with such a character? He's unleashing terror on us. He doesn't respect the rule of law. He doesn't exude statesmanship. And for us as opposition, we want to compete in a free and fair environment. We don't want to respond in the same currency. We don't want to pick guns and fight.
He was right.
We want to use civil and constitutional means.
So he was actually right when he said he's not anybody's servant, and you are sitting there and saying, this man is supposed to be a people's servant. He should call us on a table and have a discussion with us
that's not
on how we take.
You see, what happens?
From him.
What happens for us who employ civil means? We deal in the politics of engaging him where he's very weak. That's why we go to the citizenry. That's why we have battered his image irreparably, and he's now trying to pander around to say, now I can do this. He's bringing in.
Is the battering of his image irreparable, as you call it?
Yes.
Is that illusionary? Is that real?
It's real. It's real now. That's why. No, let me explain. Yes. If you can give me 2 minutes.
Sure.
Why it's real right now? You see now he has pressed the panic button, trying now to buy off people from UPC, DP. He's going even now to cultural leaders. He's now going. You will see him getting religious leaders. He's
got them already.
Exactly. So if he was in control of the state machinery, as he wants to portray himself, that actually he's invisible, no one can assail him. If that is actually what it is right now,
but Charles,
why is he pandering?
Charles, for me, first of all, this idea of President Museveni getting the opposition is not new. From day one, the concept of broad-based government was about killing the opposition, if you want to put it bluntly.
Which
willingly,
now emphasized.
most of the opposition, especially DP, in the early days joined. And NRM, and basically that was the beginning of the end.
If you were to be
just hold on.
If you were
so this new approach to opposition is just the continuous method that President Museveni has successfully used, because it works for him. Principally because our politics, I always like to say, is the politics of the desperados. One, those who are desperate because they are in things, they don't want to let go. Then there are also quite a huge chunk who are desperate to get into things. They are only trying to use opposition, some of them, to get into things, but when there is an opportunity to go through the establishment, they go for it.
But Charles, if I may speak to the opposition directly, I think that we've got to be honest with ourselves, that the opposition must realize that we are not in ordinary times. And therefore, doing the same things in the same manner may never bring the change that they so desire. There's need for creative thinking and creative approach to this whole situation. And I think for me, the mistake that many of them make is to draw a line and to suggest that the opposition are the only stakeholders in this country and the progress this country has to take. I think they need to begin to speak to different constituencies. Take, for example, the business community. The business community survives because of contracts from government. They're the ones who, and yet there's no attempt to speak to their interests. If anything goes wrong in this country, the Onapitos who run big businesses and have built big houses in this town lose the most. And yet the opposition doesn't seem to speak to those interests. I think it's time to begin to speak to the interest of other constituencies. Because President Museveni speaks to those interests, and those interests listen to him. The second thing that the opposition needs to realize is that President Museveni is not going to allow them to organize freely. He has enacted legislation that constricts this space. He has deployed a partisan police force that is going to arrest you if you go to organize. That you need to then realize that that situation requires, perhaps in my view, more clandestine, low-level action as opposed to the grand walk-to-work ideas. But small, little social organizations and social movements that create change, they need to speak to the point that the people's problems, whether it is anger, the death of women in hospitals, bad schools, is a governance problem. For as long as you don't speak to that as a governance problem, you remain detached from the population. And you appear to be spewing theories that don't connect. The people in this country are angry. Their kids are not going to good schools. They have bad hospitals. We have 16 women dying every day giving birth. And yet, we don't connect that to the maladministration, the governance issues at the top. We must begin to make those connections. And CSOs in their statement say we must make development and democracy not as separate.
Nicholas, you should give us credit. We have really done our best to do that.
We can do more.
To the extent that now a Rotary hospital in Abim has been named after Dr. Kezaala. Honestly.
Let me give you some different credit. Yona.
I wanted to say something about going down to the smaller groups and talking. A businessman here in Uganda who dares receive Rukwago or Vesige,
even an SMS,
even sending him a letter, does it? If he does it, he will that night not sleep. You will think that people. You ask him, let
me tell you this.
Okay, but I think just to give him this challenge.
I want to give him
I want to give him
to
give me. It also speaks to the president's strengths. Yes. That during the time when he was fighting the Mzee Kanyomozi as UPC 2,
yes,
there were people, business people, who are willing to support him. It means also there is a certain level of comfort zone that President Museveni has created in the country, which the opposition has to appreciate. That people who are in a comfort zone are not willing to take it.
Just hold it a moment. You're not holding a moment.
Let me answer him quickly.
Yes.
If these people were to go somewhere and have a camp, I'm sure people would approach them. But if they are going to do it liberally, in the way my young man is suggesting, it will take us.
I wanted to give him this challenge. I wanted to give
Uganda not be sure they can run away.
Just give me 1 minute to give Nicholas a challenge. I want him.
Hold it a moment. Hold it for a moment. So, what the president said actually, he was being honest. He was being great. And you said you said you've damaged his image irreparably.
Yes.
And he's able to appoint your chairman, your party chairman goes happily to join.
Happily?
I think so.
You are being generous with your words.
One of the
consultant.
Oh no.
One of the bright lights.
Was he consulted though?
One of the bright lights. One of the bright lights of
he has considered
of the Democratic Party was a lady, hardworking, focused, determined, called Florence Nachiwala Chiinji. She's poured all her energy into serving the government of President Yoweri Museveni. You got to give him credit. I don't know.
You see,
I wonder why you don't see that there is something wrong with the opposition, and particularly the Democratic Party and the other political parties, that you have not yet cracked. Like
was it in 1967? I think it was 67 when, I'm sorry, Mzee Kanyomozi, you were in UPC by that time, when Dr. Bote made that proclamation that is there an opposition here after declaring a one-party state? Is there an opposition? And we are en masse crossing to UPC. It happened, but shortly after that proclamation and the crossing of the floor by so many DP members, the government collapsed. Did it surprise you? Hardly 2 years after that incident, after that proclamation.
That's 69?
Well,
69. It was
But
around.
of course, you can say
Now,
President Museveni has
secondly,
repeatedly indicated.
you may say you has outwitted us,
Mm.
but you know his agenda. For example, when he was elected, I think when he captured power, not elected, his agenda has always been to entrench a personal rule. Has he succeeded in doing that?
Hasn't he?
No,
He celebrated 31 years.
31 years. But this is what I'm telling you. Actually, he wanted to create like an Ethiopia's kind of model. As we talk right now, I don't think there is even a single opposition member in Ethiopia.
It's 100% government.
It's 100% ruling party. That's the kind of system we wanted to put here. But
He's still trying.
And that's what he's
He's
trying to
succeeding,
do.
isn't he?
Basically, that's what he has tried
He's
to do.
succeeding, isn't he?
No way.
But
Because he has employed
if I may.
brutal methods. Now he has used the patronage. All are failing, and that's why I'm told you he's now trying to buy off one by one.
How do you define failure?
How do I define failure?
Yes.
You see, there are benchmarks. There is a test you have to use. His mission was to bury the opposition completely. Has he succeeded in doing that?
When you have
Has he succeeded?
when you have the party chairman of a major political party.
Charles, if I may,
Yes.
if I may, I mean, you've got to credit the Lukwago's for surviving in this environment. That's resilience. To take the beating, to come back every day and take this beating, come back and do the same things again. Give them the credit for resilience, for surviving that environment, and claiming some spaces. You know, they've won seats in parliament, they've won vote. You know, so they've got some credit to be given to them for their resilience. But two things that they must note: that many of us who are involved in human rights work sometimes speak to people who are in business, speak to people who are in government, who hold your hand, lean in, and whisper to you, "We are tired. This has to change. Please do some more."
So they are posing the challenge to him.
There are constituencies there.
In regard to that very message is passing, is insisting on. Right now, you recognize that I'm the Lord Mayor of Kampala, and I have the Lord Mayor's power. You know what comes with the trappings of power and everything with the Lord Mayor's power. I want you to come and sit by the Lord. I mean, in the lounge there for at least 1 week, if you can commit that time, and see how many businessmen would dare enter my office in broad daylight, and they come and say, "We have come to see the Lord Mayor." Not Lukwago, the opposition. Yes, because I'm the Lord Mayor of the city. I challenge you, come and see. How many? How many? The other day, MTN, for example, MTN, they were organizing a marathon. They even feared to invite me. And they said the person who should come and commission it and flag it off should be the executive director, KCCA, so not the Lord Mayor. You can imagine MTN inviting executive director to flag off a marathon when the Lord Mayor is there. What does that tell you?
So what does that say?
That's what I'm telling you.
What does it tell you?
You see, the man has instilled the fear. He has instilled that kind of thinking mentality that, look here, if you want to do business here in Kampala, don't dare deal with those people.
But you see, Lord Mayor, I think the opposition sometimes, with all the good arguments you have, you go into a bit of denial. Because assuming President Museveni is simply using force and fear, is not unique to him. Even just in the history of Uganda, it has not been unique to him. In Africa, it's not unique to him. So why should he succeed?
Doesn't make it right, though.
Why should he succeed and others have failed in Uganda and others have failed
because
elsewhere?
he has got control over the coercive machinery of the state.
He also has soft power. I think that's actually the biggest ending of the opposition, that you have failed to recognize that he has managed to get a critical mass of the population, either to be idle and just look by, or to actually support him.
Let's take a break.
So until when you're able to get that population,
I think we should blame online, making them drunk and giving them beer.
We'll be right. Welcome to this last segment of a very interesting discussion that we're having in studio. And we'll keep on the question, is the opposition up for grabs then? If it can't challenge President Museveni, he has succeeded in muzzling it, and we go back to the question of citizen agency. Where does it fall in? Where does it come in? There was a demonstration somewhere in Fort Portal. Initially, before the World Bank cancelled funding for the Uganda Fort Portal Road, there was a plan to do it's a kind of bypass as part of the road. We increase the kilometers that were supposed to be done. But now that it's government of Uganda funding that road, it appears that short bypass, which is supposed to connect from somewhere off Kampala Road to Kasese Road, has been removed because of budgetary issues. And it would, from what I hear, is the plan is UNRWA would put it back later, not in the current funding. And progress has been made on the road itself. The other day, I think yesterday, there was a demonstration by locals who were saying, no, we want our road done. So don't tell us the stories about who is funding. We want our road done. And that speaks a little bit.
The diversion.
Yes,
I mean
the
bypass.
Yes, which was just added to the contract. And that speaks a bit to what you would call citizen agency.
Yeah.
There was a demonstration somewhere in eastern Uganda, in Budadiri, I think in Budadiri, over an RDC who has been picking up everybody. One of the people who was interviewed on TV for the story said, you ask the RDC a question, he says I can arrest you, and he arrests you immediately. And so there was a demonstration there. That speaks a little bit to citizen agency. But the question about the opposition and learning itself, let's go back to specifics. Yona, you've watched President Museveni repeatedly pick up members of the opposition, appoint them into his cabinet. Almost 90 or 100% of the time, they go willingly. Hardly any of them ever goes back. One person attempted to go back, and also a member of the Democratic Party, by the way.
Who is that?
A man called Waswa Ziritwaula.
Oh.
He resigned over the
Yeah.
over the extension of the time of the NRA and NRC. He resigned. He went back to the Democratic Party. Then at some stage, did a deal with the NRM.
After about 10 years.
Yes, after about 10, no more than 10 years.
No, it wasn't more than 10 years.
To stand on the NRM ticket for mayor of Kampala. He didn't win. I don't know whether he decided to go back to DP or remain somewhere in between. They don't go back. You got to give
now he's an Oruta boy.
Yes, you got to give.
I'm sorry, with due respect.
You got to give President Museveni credit. I don't think Natural Change will go back and become a member of the DP. People have been asking, if Beti Kamya gets dropped or leaves government for some reason, does she go back to Uganda Federal Alliance, or does she remain somewhere? People look for Agra Wari. People look for
become an ambassador.
Yes, people look for Agra Wari. I was looking at the list of ambassadors the president has appointed, and I found a man called Nelson Ochege.
Yes. The dove man.
Yes, Nelson Ochege was the person who led the opposition into the referendum of 2000 to call 2000. Yes, to call for a return to multi-party politics. If you look at all those examples, they're just way too many.
So can I ask you, Charles,
yes,
because you are posing a challenge to us, what do you want us to do with those who get, like a Beti Kamya? She has expressly stated that she got tired, she was poverty-stricken. She said this.
She wasn't her talents were not being seen.
He said now, gentlemen and ladies, to hell with opposition. She has given up. So what do you want us to do with such character?
When I read Kezaala's name, I did a simple Google search.
Yes.
And I found that an article in the Monitor, I think July 2014, Kezaala saying he is not a man for this cheap politics, he has no problem working with President Yoweri Museveni.
So now he's fulfilling it.
Yeah. It means President Museveni has been cultivating him for all those years?
Yeah.
He's just taken him home?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Yes. So, I think that's credit to President Museveni's ability to...
As a
yes,
political master planner and tactician, President Museveni is diligent. And you've got to give it to him. He's like an hyena, he pursues you. Okay, it pursues you and pounces at the right moment.
It proves one's one that age is just a
you're
number.
saying
It's
Jesus
still able,
is cunning.
still able to function.
He's a cunning.
I want Jonas to say,
Yeah.
how has the opposition reacted to all this? Because you can go on Kampala Road
Yeah.
at Constitution Square when it was still available. You can go to Constitution Square and shout and say, you saw this man is finishing us. He is using the guns. He is using the money. He's using everything. I mean, he was faced with the same orders before he came to power.
Yeah.
30,
But
31
But he
years.
used the violent means.
But
You want us to take
yes.
that route?
But this everybody, especially in the intelligentsia, in the enlightened, are saying we are tired of wars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if
There's
I have
consensus on
already
that.
stated it,
Mhm.
the alternatives open to the opposition are very limited. I have taken his word of going down slowly and talking to people, and yes, it can be done. But how long will it take? How that impact?
Charles,
It's taken 21 years in the Gambia.
Charles,
It has taken 21
Yes.
years in
Charles, just
Zambia.
for
But
me,
also the Zambia,
Gambia.
the Gambia was surrounded by Senegal and other people who wanted a change.
But Senegal was there when...
You see,
but
Charles,
also the other guy was
in
there.
the comparative
Which
terms,
doctor, President Museveni is not particular.
his terms failed to work.
in the comparative
Just
terms,
hold on.
Yes.
I wanted to analyze the dilemma of the opposition just a little. I think we may also be giving unnecessary pressure or false expectations from today's opposition in Uganda. Maybe it's not the opposition that will actually bring change. Because the NRM has specialized and successfully absorbed all politically viable Ugandans. And they may not be critical mass of people in the opposition. So maybe Uganda is going to be, after many decades, a classic case of the NRM itself getting an opposition within. Because people thought Go Forward was going to be it and was
People
just
thought
didn't
reform
work
agenda,
out.
was it?
Reform agenda. Maybe ultimately it will be, because actually a lot of political players, all people who are interested in politics at one point or the other, have been either in or out of NRM. There are very few people who are politically minded who have not touched NRM one way or the other. And it's really,
Very few of us.
yeah, it's really conscious. I don't know, you also participated somehow. Indirectly.
No, at that time of
So I
conscription,
don't
had
believe
no
that
choice.
the fringe, the official opposition, I don't think it's critical enough or it's not representative enough of Uganda's political players to be able to defeat the
Let the Lord Mayor speak to it, to what you've just said.
well, before I come to that, this question of, giving credit to Mr. Yoweri Museveni, that he's shrewd, is what?
Street smart.
Yes, like you were saying, I don't think, you are being fair to some of us who have done our best to get him out of power. And also, you're not being honest to yourself. Because I know you're a student of history and, of course, comparative history in this country. And all these other things you may talk about. On the African continent, for example, if you are to take studies, you can talk about Mugabe. He grabbed the power in 1980. Ngwema in Equatorial Guinea, 1979. Biya, Cameroon, 1982. The list is endless. So are you trying to suggest that actually these people are very shrewd? These people, they are very smart in whatever they are doing. No, it is sheer brutality they are unleashing. Sheer
Are you
terror.
suggesting they are not?
They are not. Kabila, for example, he took power from his father, Joseph Kabila, here, just across the border here.
No, he took power after his father was
after his
assassinated.
was assassinated. That was 2001. And he has managed actually to extend his stay in power for at least 1 year after the expiry of his constitutional term. Are you suggesting that he's very shrewd? No, there is a cabal.
No,
junta, a military junta.
No, he's been forced into a negotiation. If you use the example of Kabila, he's been forced into a negotiation led by largely the Catholic Church, and he's gotten that extension, but at least there's been some discussion. If you look at the Ugandan opposition, what would you say have been the milestones that you have achieved over the years, apart from saying President Museveni is just such a complex. Yes, land grab. I'm being told that we have about a few minutes to end the show, but can we have some callers? If you could put the number on so that we have a few callers share their views.
But let me just clarify, Charles.
If you could allow the Lord Mayor to complete his thought, and then
maybe this clarity can help him to complete his
we
point.
may not guard against his overtures to the people I mean, in the opposition, for example, those who are finding they're going too tough. What do we do? Those he's compromising. What do we do? How do we guard against that? Which kind of bulwark can we build? For us, who are seen to be like we are not in conventional multi-party politics. Actually, we are vanguards in the fight for the restoration of multi-party democracy. Myself, at a very young age, when I just completed the law school, I was in that battle to restore multi-party democracy. But does it surprise you that I'm not very active in DP politics? Does it surprise you that I even stood as an independent?
Some say Mao has defeated you.
Forget about that. Forget about
Let me just clarify.
Forget about
that. I have some callers online. I have some callers. Nicholas, if you could just kindly hold it. Okay. Let me pick one or two calls.
And after that, I want to to go on what
Hello.
he has made.
Hello. Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm called Hassan.
Hassan. Yes, Hassan, keep your question or comment brief.
I'm seeing what you're discussing about, eh?
Yes, please.
Yes. What I'm saying,
yes,
President Museveni has been in power for all that time, and it's like he has gathered a lot of wealth, and that's what he's using to fetch opposition people. So that's why you see him as if he's smart and what, but I think time is going to come, and then everyone will realize what he's doing.
A lot of wealth. He hasn't given anybody a farm. I thought he just gave someone a job.
The regime,
yes,
the regime doesn't allow, people to get a lot of money. I mean, all things, businesses or what, they are being frustrated and what. So since you don't have anything actually funny. Yeah, so that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Hassan. Well, I see lots of businesses coming up and people building. I don't know if... Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
I think...
Your name, sir?
I'm called Nicholas.
Yes, Nicholas.
I think you are being unfair to the opposition for while the members of opposition are being bought off, even journalists have also been bought off, religious leaders, and
cultural leaders,
kingdom leaders,
civil society.
Everybody has, so many groups have fallen to the bribery. But I think the opposition has tried to do its best in the circumstances. And I think we need to talk as Ugandans and see how we all can work out this quagmire. And as for my brother Ona, he's talking for the business community, but while they seem like things are rosy today, if they don't work as Ugandans to try and save the situation, even their businesses won't be safe.
Okay.
For long. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas. We have another caller. Hello. 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 Yes. Please talk to us. I'm told someone is online. Your line has been picked. Please speak to us if you're there. I'm not sure he's ready. Can you pick another caller? Hello. Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Simon. I'm calling from Kampala.
Yes, Simon. Go right ahead.
Charles, thanks very much for the discussion in the studio.
Welcome.
Yes, I think too, adding to the previous callers, I think your questions are a bit harsh to the opposition. And I think that Museveni is gradually and steadily losing the popularity amongst the population. if you take the statistics of 1996 elections, take the statistics of, compare them to 2001, compare them down the road 2006, 7, and the recent election, you realize that even if the individual opposition leaders like Kenyas are crossing the divide, the opposition movement among the citizens is growing, and there's no adequate money for Museveni to give up, to dole out the population and make everybody close to his side. Age is catching up with him, and eventually he will run out of ideas. But secondly, don't only think it's Museveni who is bright. Museveni has got so many intelligent people who misuse their intelligence for again a selfish purpose. The ministers, the RDCs, all these, collectively you can call them Museveni. That's not an individual. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. I think that's an interesting perspective. Hello, we have another caller. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening to you. Now,
yes. Your name?
my name is Michael.
Your name is?
Michael.
Michael. Go right ahead, Michael.
Yes.
Mr. Road Mayor is saying, is arguing,
yes.
the president has the machinery as the
you're very low. We're struggling to hear you.
Mr. Road Mayor is saying,
yes,
that Museveni has the military, has machinery and everything. And you are in a country like Uganda, where they say they are governed by a dictator. How are they, as opposition, determined to put down this dictator? And if they have no plan, strategic plan, how can they come up and keep on saying the dictator, he has the machinery, he has the army? How are they prepared?
Okay, thank you, Michael. Let's just do one more caller. Hello? Hello?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Tumusime.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to correct the mayor about Obote and Museveni. Obote was genuinely appointing people and trusting them to do their work. Museveni doesn't, even if he appoints you, he doesn't even trust you an inch. Number two, the intelligence which has been talked about by Yona, Ms. Mose, some of them have invested here. The money they grab from wherever they grab it from, they have invested it in here, and that is what Museveni wants. So when you talk about demonstration on the street and what, people quickly think about their property. That's why they say they are tired of wars. And Museveni takes an advantage of that one because people, he first impoverished people, and then those who cross to him, he gives them money, they do investments, and then that becomes the reason as to why they cannot tolerate the demonstrations of the opposition. So, I think...
Yes, please? Sorry, we lost Mr. Tumsime before he could finish his thought. But we need to bring this discussion back to studio. So thank you very much, Hassan, Nicholas, Simon, Michael, and Tumsime for sharing with us. There are so many people trying to get through on the telephone, but we don't have enough time to finish this. So we're going to run across the table and try to respond to some of these comments. Nicholas, you wanted to make a comment?
I just want to say, when I say President Museveni is smart, I don't say smart as in Ivy League smart, okay? But smart in a way that he has outsmarted his his opponents, and in a way that might be dirty and manipulative in a way, but not in admiration, but in admission of his success over and above his opponent. So I think that the Lord Mayor needs to understand that I'm no admirer of President Museveni, but I think that we need to admit the fact that over the 30 years he's been in power, he's retained that power using all sorts of means, manipulative, force, bribery, coercion, and all kinds of things, and has prevailed over and above his opponent.
So the ultimate is he's been able to keep the power. Anyway.
He's been able to keep the power.
You listen to some of the callers. They have their views. I only speak to Nicholas later, but many people think I am being harsh to the opposition. But many people also ask that is over 30 years, isn't 30 years plus enough time for the opposition to have reflected and said, we tried this method, it didn't work, we tried the other method, it didn't work, we tried this method, it didn't work, and this is, we need a new approach to deal with things.
But we have gone through that of saying the new approach. What are the options? They have tried everything from walking to going to courts to demonstrating, and the results are known.
To the polls?
To the polls, everything is known. I take owner's view. If there are going to be a change, in most of these difficult situations, first, the easiest change is a revolt from within, right? From within the organization itself, NRM, they have tried, but their trial was to move out. When they have moved out, they have been hammered on the head. So, I said the options left to the opposition to do are very, very, very limited. We can only, since most people are saying we are tired of wars and not going to wars and what have you, they are very limited. But ultimately, unless you have a mass uprising, the options are very, very limited. Can the opposition do it? It doesn't need only the opposition. Can the population do it? Now that the man has said he is not their servant, can the masses, including the opposition, do it? Including those who are with him. That's all. That's my way of looking at it.
I know someone said I speak for business. Actually, I don't speak for business, not for my employer, not for business. I speak for as a Ugandan. But it's also true that
you're also not anybody's servant.
Yeah, business. My employer servant and my family servant. But I think business certainly is cautious, and that's why I think for many people the debate is not so much whether the opposition will take over, but whether NRM can manage transition from President Museveni. That's what I think most people now are occupied with. And they are hoping, those especially those who have interest to protect, and there are many, both within the NRM and without. They have become a critical mass, people who have vested interest in the continuity of, you may say, the stability. That's the big word which is often used. So some people are thinking if President Museveni can manage the transition, that's why when military changes are made, people get excited. Are we now looking at a successor? So these are real things, no? People some believe that the NRM can actually be the one to bring change through President Museveni, either handing over or staying on until when he can't stay on, and then things take their course.
Lord Mayor.
You see, I hate it when you position it as if it's a contest between Mr. Museveni and the opposition.
Shouldn't it be?
No, it's about nation building. And that's why the other caller was putting a challenge to all of you and said the media has been subdued. I'm sorry, I don't want to use the word he used.
It's okay. There's journalists who have been bribed or paid or intimidated.
The civil society, the religious leaders and everyone. You can imagine the judiciary can't call this man to order. They can go to the extent of issuing a stupid court order. Those are not my words. Coming from the Speaker of Parliament, and nothing can be taken against that judicial officer. And even Parliament itself.
I'm told judicial orders are appealed.
A stupid one is not subject to appeal. It calls for disciplinary action.
Lukaku is the lawyer. I am not, and Nicholas is the lawyer here. So.
You see, I can appeal against a decision which is made judiciously, but not a one made behind back doors. For example, you can forge a judgment, and then you tell me go and appeal. When you have forged the judgment, in my case, for example, the same judicial officer locked out my lawyers, and the lawyers tried to knock at the door. He was locked in. They tried to knock and the man refused. Until when he opened and they saw him, hiding somewhere. And then you are telling me go and appeal. And then he said go and appeal. Up to now they are telling me go and appeal. When actually subsequently, how do I now appeal when subsequently I went to High Court and I emerged victorious? I got a judgment in my favor before Justice Lydia Mugambe. Up to now they owe me 500 million. Which has been, it's provided for even in the budget. They have refused stubbornly. So where do you want me to go? How do I appeal? So what can I do under the circumstances? That's the state of affairs we are contending with.
Which government hands over 500 million to one of its biggest critics, biggest opponents?
My legal entitlement. If it's my legal entitlement, why would you block it? Anyway, that's besides the point. So this issue of disrupting a business. Honestly, was there tilling of land during the times when these people were in the Rural Triangle? Would those peasants who go and attend to their goats and whatnot, going to tether their goats and till their land and what? It wouldn't happen. So when it's a fight, when it's a war, all of us have to bear the cost. Whether you're in the business community, the media, civil society, everyone, we have to bear the cost.
Okay.
So,
gentlemen, I'm afraid our time is up. We need to get out of here.
What is forgotten by those business people is that if it explodes,
exactly,
everything will burn.
Well, I thought it is the responsibility of the opposition or whoever wants to change the status quo. So it's not to either make the threat very big.
Everyone no, it's not the responsibility of the opposition. It's the responsibility of Ugandans.
Okay.
No, what he said, is it agenda? What did you say? State agency?
State agency. No, citizen agency.
Citizens agency. Yeah. If we want to regain the citizenry power, it's a duty of everyone. Okay. Yeah. It's not investigate, it's not require anybody.
We need to get out of here. Someone says, good evening, Charles. Don't you think the NRM versus opposition is like government pretends to pay while civil servants pretend to work? The two sides are a cat and mouse chase, and the race has reached the stage of the cat catching up with the mouse over time. This is Petero. He's watching us. And then someone else says, to me, it shouldn't be news for someone from opposition to be appointed to any position in government. After all, we already have opposition people as members of government in legislature and even judiciary. So why not in executive? The problem is that the previous regimes weren't used to working with opponents. That's Jose Nwabine in Kampala, the Antonde, I believe.
He doesn't understand.
Our time is out. To Simon, to Nicholas, who questioned Janice said I'm being unfair to the opposition. Said even journalists, religious leaders, civil society, cultural leaders, everybody gets bribed. Well, my job is to point these things out, not to say if it's happening in a broad-based way, then it's acceptable.
If it happens in a broad way?
Broad-based. Everybody is getting it.
One final message to Ugandans watching the show, that you can be the change you want to be. Nobody's going to change it for you. If your kids are not studying well, if your hospitals don't have medicine, you've got to stand up and hold leaders to account at whatever level. And I think for me, the moment we realize and exercise that power, no amount of bullets or guns or force or bribery can stop Ugandans. If we all got out and say enough is enough of this corruption, theft in government.
Look, we can't extend them. I think the challenge for the opposition is that Ugandans are living positively with the president. That's the challenge for the opposition.
If two people have had the final word, so I will allow Jonas to have a final word and
my own outlook is that, in fact, what amuses me is when people are celebrating. Is it NRM? Saying, oh, we have so many things done. We have 4,000 kilometers of roads done. They don't look at the comparison with the past. 4,000 kilometers of road have been done in 30 years, which means every year we have been adding on 130 kilometers, and then you clap. This misunderstanding.
Half of the 31 were at war, they will tell you.
Yeah, well, who caused the war? It's like...
No, when there was before...
There weren't, there was. The thing is, my own belief is the citizens of this country have got to say enough is enough and move on.
Okay.
If they don't move on, things will be remain.
Your last one.
Mine, this, whatever you are seeing today, President Museveni is doing, it shows that the center can no longer hold. Actually, he's desperate. So the mere fact that he's all out now to buy members of the opposition should not cause public despondency, should not cause mistrust, should not cause fear. A desperate person is buying off desperate. President Museveni, who is desperate, is buying off members of the opposition who are desperate. So in the end, they are going to create a pool of desperate people. That shouldn't worry you. It will just collapse. I'm telling you, it will just naturally collapse because the population, the people are not being bought. Because, and it's you now to regain your power. It's up to you, as Nicholas said. You are the change you want.
Okay. If people feel they have their power, if they actually feel that they have the power, like they were clapping in Masindi, maybe. But as we get out of here, thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time for the show. The only question I'd like to put is, who and how does President Museveni get held accountable, especially when he says, I'm not anybody's servant. I'm not fighting for anybody. I'm fighting for my beliefs. I'm a freedom fighter. How does he get held accountable? Maybe that's a question we'll keep asking ourselves and seeking answers from, among others, people within the National Resistance Movement and those who have fought alongside President Museveni over the years when we have the next opportunity. Thank you very much, Nicholas. Thank you very much, Yona. Thank you very much, Ona. Thank you very much, Arias, for making time for the show. Thank you very much to all our viewers for making time for the show and staying up late, actually, to watch this show, and especially to our wonderful production crew that stays up late to deliver the show to you. From me, it's a good night.